Shadows beyond the stars. Commander Elena Reyes stood rigid in her dress uniform, her spine straight as a rail gun barrel, as the laughter echoed through the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly. The massive domed hall, designed to accommodate beings from over 300 species, glittered with bioluminescent decorations and quantum-locked architecture that seemed to shift and flow like liquid despite being solid matter. "And what exactly does the Earth delegation bring to our assembly?" asked High Arbiter Zixforal, a towering insectoid whose carapace shimmered with neural implants. His mandibles clicked in what Reyes had learned was the Vesperian equivalent of a condescending smile. "Earth offers technological innovation, cultural diversity, and a commitment to peaceful expansion," Reyes responded, her voice steady despite the dismissive chittering from the assembled diplomats. "Our recent developments in propulsion technology have—" "Propulsion?" interrupted Ambassador Krell, a gelatinous being from the methane oceans of Epsilon Eridani. Ripples of luminescence cascaded through his translucent body as he spoke. "You've barely mastered rudimentary fold drives. Our maintenance drones use more sophisticated technology than your flagship vessels." More laughter spread through the chamber. Reyes felt her cheeks flush, but maintained her composure. 20 years in Earth's unified space command had taught her patience under fire, both literal and metaphorical. "The human species only achieved faster than light travel within the last century," observed another delegate, this one a crystalline entity that communicated through light patterns. "They still rely on physical neural networks for computation." "How primitive." Behind Reyes, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, Earth's leading quantum physicist and the head of their scientific delegation, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Let them underestimate us," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Remember Protocol Horizon." Reyes gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Protocol Horizon, Earth's most closely guarded secret, was the reason they were here. Though none of the Assembly species knew it yet, the Assembly acknowledges Earth's application, announced High Arbiter Zixforal after the laughter subsided. "You are granted provisional membership, with access to Tier 3 trading rights and colonization permissions for Sectors 87 through 91. We suggest focusing on support roles where your unique perspectives might prove useful." Support roles. Sector 87 through 91. Reyes didn't need to check the star charts to know they'd been offered the galactic equivalent of a broom closet. Sectors on the far edge of assembly space, resource poor and isolated. "The Earth government thanks the Assembly for this opportunity," Reyes replied diplomatically, the words feeling hollow in her mouth. As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber, Reyes caught fragments of conversation from the other species. "Barely more than clever animals. Amusing that they think they're ready. Wonder how long before they're extinct like the others." Once aboard their ship, the ESV Prometheus, Reyes slammed her fist against the conference room wall. "They treat us like children who've just learned to walk," she seethed. "Do they have any idea what we've accomplished just to get here?" Dr. Nakamura looked up from his quantum tablet, his eyes reflecting the holographic display. "Their arrogance works in our favor, Commander. If they knew about Project Helios, they'd try to stop us," Reyes finished. "Or steal it." Nakamura nodded. "Precisely. And speaking of Project Helios, we've received a transmission from Luna Base. Dr. Santiago reports the latest tests were successful. Full-dimensional phasing achieved with complete spatial integrity." Reyes felt a surge of pride and vindication. While the Assembly species mocked humanity's primitive technology, Earth scientists had been quietly working on something revolutionary, technology that no other species had conceived, let alone mastered. "What about the crews?" she asked. "Any physiological effects?" "None," Nakamura replied. "The dimensional bubble maintains perfect homeostasis for organic matter. The test pilots reported no disorientation, no nausea, not even the slightest headache." "Good," Reyes said, "because I have a feeling we're going to need it sooner than we planned." 3 weeks later, Her premonition proved horrifyingly accurate. The emergency signal from Vega Prime colony pierced through subspace channels, fragmentary and distorted. Rise watched the partial transmission in the Prometheus's command center, her blood running cold as the colony administrator's panic-stricken face appeared on screen. Coming through the walls. I repeat, they're coming through solid matter. This is Administrator Chen of Vega Prime colony requesting immediate evacuation assistance. They're everywhere. There. The transmission cut to static. 8,000 colonists, whispered Nakamura, his face ashen. Just gone. Rise immediately requested emergency assistance from the Galactic Assembly. After 4 days of bureaucratic delays, they dispatched a single scout vessel. Our preliminary scans suggest a catastrophic life support failure, reported the Medusan captain, his tentacles waving dismissively on the view screen, possibly due to human error in system calibration. These things happen with newer species. We checked the colony's transmissions, Rice countered. Their life support systems were functioning perfectly. And what about Administrator Chen's final message? Something was attacking them. The Medusan captain's skin changed to a pattern that Rice recognized as condescension. Panicked hallucinations during oxygen deprivation can create such impressions, Commander. The imaging we recovered shows no signs of weapons discharge or physical combat. When the connection terminated, Rice turned to her senior staff. They're lying, or they're not telling us everything. Why would they lie? Asked Lieutenant Commander Jackson, her security chief. That's what we need to find out, Rice replied. They didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, Proxima Centauri colony went dark. 15,000 more humans vanished without a trace. This time, they received no distress call, only automated system alerts that terminated abruptly. When Reyes demanded another emergency session with the Assembly, she was met with the same dismissive attitude. Ambassador Krell actually had the audacity to suggest that humans weren't suited for deep space colonization and should perhaps focus on their home system until they'd evolved greater resilience. After the third colony disappeared, Tav City Outpost with its 5,000 inhabitants, Reyes received unexpected confirmation of her suspicions. Lieutenant Reed, one of her intelligence officers, managed to intercept encrypted communications between Assembly representatives. Human buffer zones performing as expected. Void Striders remaining focused on their new prey. Unfortunate, but necessary sacrifices until the containment protocol. Reyes called an emergency meeting with Earth's Unified Command. On secure quantum encrypted channels, military and scientific leaders from around the planet listened grimly as she reported her findings. They're using us as bait, she concluded. The sectors they granted us border something they call Void Striders, some kind of predatory species or phenomenon they've been containing for centuries. They deliberately placed our colonies in harm's way to distract these entities from their own territories. The ultimate buffer zone, General Okoye said, her face grim on the holographic display. They gave us worthless sectors knowing we'd be attacked. Can we evacuate our remaining colonies? Asked the UN Secretary-General. Not in time, Rice replied. Whatever these Void Striders are, they're attacking with increasing frequency. We need a direct defense capability. All eyes turned to Dr. Nakamura. Project Helios, the physicist said quietly. It's time. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in chambers shielded from all known forms of detection, Project Helios had been humanity's best-kept secret for decades. Initiated after a strange dimensional anomaly, was discovered in Antarctica's ice sheet in 2089. The project had progressed in absolute secrecy, even as humanity joined the galactic community. While other species explored traditional space, humanity had discovered something far more profound, the means to phase into higher spatial dimensions. Dr. Elisa Santiago, Project Helios director, led Reyes and Nakamura through security checkpoints into the cavernous main hangar. There, suspended in a cradle of exotic materials and quantum stabilizers, floated the most advanced vessel ever created by human hands, the Hyperion. Unlike conventional spacecraft with their visible engines and practical design, the Hyperion resembled an elongated teardrop of liquid obsidian. Its surface absorbed light rather than reflecting it, creating an unsettling visual effect as if a piece of the universe had been cut away and replaced with absolute nothingness. "Is she ready?" Rise asked, unable to hide the awe in her voice. Santiago nodded. "Final calibrations completed yesterday. The dimensional drive core is stable, and the navigation systems have been fully integrated with the phase shift technology." "Explain to me again how this works," Rise requested as they approached the vessel. Despite numerous briefings, the concepts remained on the edge of comprehensibility. "Conventional space exists in 3 dimensions that we can perceive and move through," Santiago explained. "But mathematics and quantum theory prove that at least 11 dimensions exist in total. The Hyperion can move laterally into dimensions 4 through 7, essentially stepping sideways out of our reality." "And these void striders?" Rise asked. "Based on the intercepted communications and colony footage, what do we know about them?" Nakamura pulled up holographic imagery on his tablet. "They appear to have limited 4th-dimensional capabilities, enough to partially phase through solid matter in our 3-dimensional space. That's how they've been penetrating our colony defenses. But they're not true higher-dimensional beings. And the Hyperion can track them," Rice confirmed. "Better than that," Santiago replied with a hint of pride. "We can follow them into their partial phase state, then push further into dimensions they can't access. We can outmaneuver them in spaces they don't even comprehend." Ray studied the vessel that represented humanity's greatest achievement and possibly their last hope. "How soon can she be deployed?" "The crew has been in specialized training for months," answered Santiago. "Captain Ishida and his team can depart in 48 hours. "Make it 24, Rise ordered. "We've just received word that Epsilon Indi colony has detected unusual energy signatures at the edge of their system. If the pattern holds, they're next." As they prepared for humanity's first foray into higher dimensions, none of them could have predicted just how drastically the Hyperion would change their species' standing in the galaxy, or what horrors awaited them beyond the veil of conventional reality. The impossible becoming possible. The Hyperion's bridge was unlike any conventional spacecraft command center. Instead of the usual array of screens and control stations, it featured a spherical chamber with walls of shifting darkness, interrupted only by glowing neural interfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. Captain Takashi Ishida stood at the center of this spatial anomaly, his experienced eyes scanning the dimensional readings that few humans could comprehend. "Final systems check complete," announced Lieutenant Wei, the ship's dimensional navigation officer. "Phase shift drive at optimal parameters." Ishida nodded, feeling the weight of 30,000 human lives resting on his shoulders. Epsilon Indi colony had gone dark just hours ago. No distress call, no automated warning, just silence. If the Hyperion failed, another colony would inevitably be next. "Status report from the observation team," he asked. Commander Elena Rice's voice came through the quantum-entangled comm system, perfectly clear despite the impossible distances involved. "Assembly vessels are maintaining position at the edge of the Epsilon Indi system. They're observing but not engaging." "As expected," Ishida replied bitterly. "They're watching their experiment play out." Dr. Nakamura's voice joined the conversation. "Captain, we've processed the sensor data from the automated probes we sent to Epsilon Indi before communication was lost. The dimensional fracture signatures match what we recorded at the other colony sites. The void striders are definitely there." "Then so are we," Ishida declared. He addressed his crew, 12 of Earth's finest, selected not just for their technical skills, but for their psychological resilience. "Phase protocols active. Prepare for dimensional transition." The Hyperion's revolutionary drive core, a sphere of contained quantum anomalies, began to hum with power. Unlike conventional engines that pushed against physical space, this technology folded the fabric of reality itself, allowing the vessel to slip sideways into dimensions beyond normal perception. Dimensional phase commencing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The universe seemed to ripple around them. Colors impossible in three-dimensional space flowed across the bridge as the Hyperion shifted partially into the fourth dimension. To any conventional observer, the ship would have simply vanished. "Phase stable," reported Chief Engineer Rodriguez. "We're existing partially in dimensions 3 and 4. Now we see what they see," Ishida said quietly. The dimensional sensors activated, translating higher dimensional space into comprehensible imagery. The view that materialized on the bridge's displays left the crew in stunned silence. Epsilon Indy space was crawling with them. The Void Striders, not ships as they had expected, but entities, massive amorphous creatures that seemed to exist as moving tiers in the fabric of reality. Their bodies, if such a term even applied, were constantly shifting between dimensions, appearing as impossible geometries that hurt the human eye to observe directly. They surrounded what remained of Epsilon Indy colony, absorbing structures, technology, and, most horrifyingly, the colonists themselves into their dimensional rifts. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Wei. "They're feeding." Ishida's tactical mind quickly processed what he was seeing. They've evolved to hunt across dimensional boundaries. That's why conventional defenses failed. To three-dimensional beings, they would appear to materialize from nowhere. "And the Assembly knew," added his XO, Commander Helena Diaz. "They've been dealing with these predators for centuries." Ishida's jaw tightened. "Well, they're about to learn that humans aren't the helpless prey they took us for." Tactical, prepare dimensional charges. Navigation, plot an intercept course to the largest concentration of Void Striders. The Hyperion glided through the impossible space between dimensions, its presence completely undetected by the feeding predators. Unlike the Assembly species, who had developed technology based solely on manipulating three-dimensional space, humanity had taken a different evolutionary path, one that had accidentally prepared them for this very moment. "They can't perceive us," Nakamura observed through the comlink. "We're operating in dimensions they can't fully access, just as we theorized." "Dimensional charges armed," reported Lieutenant Commander Ortiz from Tactical. "But sir, we don't know how these entities will react. This is uncharted territory." "Everything we do is uncharted territory," Ishida replied. "That's the human condition. Deploy charges on my mark." The dimensional charges, weapons designed to disrupt the boundary between dimensions rather than cause physical destruction, were launched toward the largest concentration of Void Striders. The crystalline devices phased through conventional space before detonating in a cascade of reality-warping energy. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Void Striders convulsed as their partial dimensional phasing collapsed, forcibly returning them to conventional three-dimensional space. Now fully materialized, they appeared as massive, writhing constructs of dark energy and exotic matter, vulnerable in a way they had never experienced. "They're retreating," called out Lieutenant Wei. But one massive entity, easily the size of Earth's moon, turned toward the Hyperion. Somehow, it had sensed them. "It's adapting," warned Nakamura. "Its dimensional signature is changing." The creature surged toward them, its form stretching across dimensions in ways that defied comprehension. The Hyperion rocked violently as the entity's appendages grazed their dimensional field. "Push us deeper," Ishida ordered. "Take us to Dimension 5. Rodriguez's hands flew across the neural interface. "Sir, we've never tested full immersion in the fifth dimension with a crew aboard. The simulations suggest. We're dead if we don't." Ishida cut him off. "Do it." The Hyperion's drive core pulsed with blinding energy as the ship phased even further beyond conventional reality. The sensation was indescribable, as if the crew's very consciousness was being stretched across infinite possibilities. Colors that had no names in human language washed over them. Time seemed to fracture into countless parallel streams. "Fifth-dimensional space. Stable," Rodriguez reported, his voice sounding distant despite his proximity. "But we can't maintain this state for long. the entropy cost is exponential. Through the dimensional sensors, they could see the Void Striders searching for them, confused by their disappearance. It existed primarily between the third and fourth dimensions, unable to perceive or follow them into the fifth. "Deploy the dimensional anchor," Ishida commanded. "Let's end this." The Hyperion's most powerful weapon, the dimensional anchor, was released. Unlike the charges, this device didn't merely disrupt dimensional boundaries. It fixed them, creating a point of absolute dimensional stability that forced everything in its radius to conform to conventional three-dimensional physics. As the anchor activated, the effect was catastrophic for the Void Striders. Their existence depended on their ability to exist partially outside conventional space. Now forcibly confined to the third dimension, their impossible biology began to collapse. Their bodies, never designed to fully materialize, began to disintegrate. The Hyperion shifted back to fourth-dimensional space and time to witness the entity's retreat, a mass exodus as the surviving Void Striders fled from the unfathomable weapon that had been deployed against them. "They're running," Dias said in disbelief. "They're actually running from us." "Not just from us," Ishida replied, understanding the significance of what they had accomplished. "They're running from a prey species that suddenly became predators." 1 week later, Commander Reyes walked into the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly once more. This time, there was no laughter, no dismissive gestures from the gathered ambassadors. Instead, an uneasy silence pervaded the massive hall. High Arbiter Zixvoral's neural implants pulsed with agitation as he addressed her. "Commander Reyes, the Assembly has reviewed your actions at Epsilon Indi. Your unauthorized military operation in Assembly-sanctioned territory represents a severe breach of protocol." "Unauthorized," Reyes repeated, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We were defending our colony from predators that you knowingly placed in our path." Murmurs spread through the chamber as many species heard this accusation for the first time. "The Void Striders have been a galactic threat for millennia," Zixvoral responded, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Containment protocols have been in place since before your species discovered fire. These protocols require strategic placement of buffer zones." "You mean sacrificial territories," Reyes countered. "With sacrificial species." Ambassador Krell's gelatinous form rippled with what might have been discomfort. "What the Arbiter means to express is that difficult choices were made for the greater good. Many young species have occupied those territories over the eons. None have survived. It is regrettable but necessary." "And now?" Reyes asked. "Now that humans have not only survived but driven the Void Striders from 3 systems." A new voice joined the conversation, a crystalline entity representing one of the Assembly's oldest species. "Now, Commander, we find ourselves in unprecedented territory. Your species has deployed technology that our scientists believe to be theoretically impossible. Dimensional phasing beyond the 4th dimension," confirmed another ambassador, "with controlled navigation and weapon capabilities." "How did you develop this?" Reyes allowed herself a small smile. "It turns out that being primitive has its advantages. While your civilizations were perfecting technologies based on manipulating conventional space, humans took a different path. We asked different questions. We explored possibilities that your established scientific paradigms had dismissed." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, the primitive newcomers, had solved a problem that had plagued the galaxy for thousands of years. "The Earth government proposes a new arrangement," Reyes continued. "Our vessels will patrol the dimensional boundaries where the Void Striders operate. In exchange, we expect full membership rights, access to all Assembly scientific databases, and reparations for the colonies we lost while you were using us as bait. You dare to make demands of the Assembly?" Zixvoral's voice rose in indignation. "We dare," Reyes replied calmly. "Because at this moment, the Hyperion is positioned in the 5th dimension just outside this chamber, undetectable by any of your sensors, but carrying enough dimensional anchors to collapse this entire section of space into fixed 3-dimensional reality." The threat didn't need to be elaborated. Many assembly species had evolved in higher dimensions, maintaining physical forms in conventional space, while their consciousness existed partially in higher planes. Forcing them into fixed three-dimensional existence would be devastating. Of course, Rise added, we would prefer peaceful cooperation. Humanity has always sought to join the galactic community as equals. Now we simply have the leverage to ensure that happens. The negotiations lasted for 3 days. When they concluded, humanity had secured not just full membership in the Assembly, but leadership of a new dimensional security council. Earth's technology, once dismissed as primitive, was now the galaxy's most valuable resource. As Rice prepared to return to Earth with the signed treaties, Ambassador Krell approached her privately. "You've changed everything," the gelatinous being observed. "The balance of power that has existed for millennia." "That's what humans do," Rice replied. "We change things." "Your species was underestimated," Krell admitted. "A mistake the Assembly will not make again." Rice smiled. "Good, because we're just getting started." Aboard the Prometheus, Dr. Nakamura was waiting with a quantum tablet displaying the latest data from Project Helios. The Hyperion's success has fast-tracked the production of the entire dimensional fleet, he reported excitedly. And the research team has already identified theoretical access points to dimensions 8 and 9. 9 dimensions, Rice mused, looking out at the stars that now seem somehow closer, more accessible than ever before. Imagine what we'll find there. That's always been humanity's greatest strength, Nakamura replied. Our ability to imagine the impossible, and then make it real. As the Prometheus began its journey back to Earth, the Assembly's central world diminished behind them. Rice thought about how quickly everything had changed. Just weeks ago, they had been mocked as primitive newcomers, barely worth acknowledging. Now, the most advanced species in the galaxy were scrambling to establish research partnerships with Earth. They had laughed at humans for being different, for asking unusual questions, for pursuing technologies that established scientific paradigms had deemed impossible. They weren't laughing anymore. The universe had just become infinitely larger, and humanity was leading the way into its unexplored dimensions.